I developed a theory about it's really collective humanity, that we are not individuals. We are part of a group, and the group is more powerful than the individuals. And within this group, we have some parts of the group who work on behalf of the rest of us to provide us with safety mechanisms so that we can endure the terrors and get on with our daily lives. And the great artists are always the ones who do this on behalf of the rest of humanity, given that the artists and the rest of us are all part of one corporate entity which is bigger than and more powerful than and more inclusive than any individual. So it goes against the rampant, aggressive individualism of the early and middle part of the 20th century, where everything was the individual. I don't believe that. I believe that we are, as Velikovsky said, descendants of survivors who are themselves descendants of survivors, and that the cataclysmic experiences of the past are built into us. These are prenatal components of knowledge that we bring into our postnatal lives. Sigmund Freud, who was very much interested in the individual psychology or pathology, nevertheless wrote later in his life that there is an archaic heritage. There is a collective memory which is unconscious and which form part of the heritage of the race. It's a racial heritage that we carry with us into our ordinary lives. And he says, just as you find animals who find themselves in situations, young animals for the first time in their lives, and they act as if they know this and they're very familiar with it, and they know what to do with it, and birds can migrate 5,000 miles in the summer and 5,000 miles back in the winter, and they're just young birds and so on. There is an innate knowledge, an archaic dimension of knowledge that we all have. We are not just as old as our birth certificates. Part of us is much older, and part of us is much older still. And in these other parts, we share a common heritage with all people who are born. So this is also a very radical, revolutionary bombshell of an idea, but I believe in it, and I believe that a number of catastrophists, if you scratch them, probably believe in it as well, that we have a prenatal knowledge that we carry with us into our present lives. With Darwin, he believed that speciation was a straight line. In other words, organisms are born, they fight for competition, the ones who are more successful leave more offspring, and then if something happens and they acquire a more useful variation, then those who inherit that variation are more successful, and it keeps going on. And eventually, after 2 million years, the organism has been modified so much that it becomes a separate species which cannot mate with the previous species, and that's the way in which you designate a new species, and it takes 2 million years to happen. Now, as I see it now, there are 3 alternatives for speciation. You have the very slow, very long Darwinian picture, which to me makes nonsense. In other words, my smeller tells me this is stupid, and there's no evidence because we don't have a filmed record continuously for 2 million years of organisms showing how they transform until they become a final species. So I don't even know why anyone ever believed in Darwin. To me, as a non-scientist, I just look at it, it doesn't smell right. Now, the middle position was taken by Stephen Jay Gould, who was the great antagonist of the supporters of Darwin in the middle and late 20th century. He doesn't declare himself to be a catastrophist, but he developed the idea of punctuated evolution, meaning sometimes there is slow and gradual evolution, but sometimes it gets punctuated by catastrophes. And to him, the punctuations were important because these were moments of what he calls mass extinction. And that most biologists of 50 years ago did not give due credit to mass extinctions as playing a major role. They said it may play 5%, 2%, but 95% was natural selection, pure Darwin. Now but really Gould was in the middle. Now at the other extreme is Velikovsky, who says that there is instant speciation. And he gives as an example a bomb that falls on a house in London and blows it up and leaves a crater. In the crater they find flowers, but these flowers have never been seen to exist before. So the idea is that the extreme heat and pressure of the bomb instantly created new species of flowers in a matter of 1 second, not 2 million years. So I am very much a Velikovskyan. I believe in abrupt interruptions. I think that punctuated equilibrium is not quite right. I think there are punctuations and then there are periods of equilibrium. But the periods of equilibrium are simply mopping up after the catastrophes. Darwin is right when he says there is survival of the fittest, but that's a truism. Any individual who is reasonably educated, if you tell him that if there were a new condition, then those organisms that have the best suite of characteristics to survive under the new conditions will thrive better than those who don't. But a number of people have reduced Darwin to the slogan, survivors survive. That's all it means. So as far as I'm concerned, Darwin said something that is pretty obvious. If I walked up to you in the street and said, look, this is what happens, you would say, well, that seems to make sense. But that means that Darwin is not any great innovator. All he did is say something which is a truism. Secondly, if you believe in mass extinctions, even occasionally like Stephen Jay Gould or with Velikovsky as being the main agents of speciation, then it's not survival of the fittest, it's survival of the luckiest. And the luckiest doesn't mean you have the best characteristics, you're the strongest, you're the toughest, blah, blah, blah. It means you just happen to have been lucky to survive a catastrophe, whereas other animals that may be bigger and stronger than you didn't because they were in the wrong place at the wrong time. So survival simply means where you happen to be at a time when the shit hits the fan, you see? So that's the way I see the history of speciation on the earth. And my friend, the late Charlie Ginenthal, just died a few months ago, Charlie Ginenthal, in the last book, this is just being published now, writes about a certain kind of fish, a cichlid fish, where one fish produces 3 offspring at the same time. All 3 are different. They're different species. They can't mate with each other. And they are 3 different species from one parent at the same moment. There's no 2 million years that you have to wait. It happens just like that. So I think that these are tremendous revolutions in how we are going to see the meaning and the origin of life on Earth and the way Earth exists in terms of its environment, which is the solar system.